Hello, everyone. Merry Christmas. I just wanted to share a story. I might start doing this more often because things seem to happen a lot. But this story is about I went to a nightclub on Tuesday and I left at like 2 in the morning, and there was a man by my car, and he was making like unintelligible noises and occasionally kind of yelling out, and his whole body was like very contracted. And I went to go get into my car, and the alarm went off. And so I was like, "Sorry, brother," because it seemed like that could be like disorienting. And he stared at me and was speaking, like making noises, and it's like I couldn't understand him. First of all, I'm like not close enough to quite understand that, and then those aren't words; those are noises. But for whatever reason, I went out and I approached him, and I asked him what he was saying, and he spoke to me. Largely, it was like single syllable like sounds with some words mixed in there. But he said something about hurt me or something like that, and I asked him who hurt him, and he said the United States. And I asked him if he wanted a hug, and he said yes, and I gave him a hug. And you just feel how badly that his like whole system had been just starving for that. And he got really intense. Stood there with him, and he got like right in my face, staring right in my eyes, and it got more and more and more intense, and like spittles hitting me in the face, and he's making these noises, and I'm just sending him love basically. And that lasted for probably like 15 seconds, and then it broke, and then he said, "I really like you," something like that. Again, like some words, but you get the message. And told him I like him too. And then he asked for my permission to die. He's like, "Can I die, please?" And I told him, I couldn't stop you. And he got like really intense again, and just kind of like stared and got in my face. And then it broke, and he broke into a smile and stated again that he liked me. And he said something like, "I want to feel joy." And I don't know exactly how everything progressed. It's kind of a blur. But basically, he said he wanted to feel joy, and I just stood there with him as he would go through these really intense. He's I'm not really talking very much. He's making these noises and trying to speak and communicate, and he's getting right in my face and getting like really intense. And it's like there'd be these dips he would go, and some of the words that were coming through, it felt like basically trying to, at some level, scare me. Like he's clearly starving for the connection. He wants me to be speaking to him, but it's almost like it's better to get it out of the way or something like that. But he's getting right at my face, and my mind is telling me that I could die. He's right here. I can't really see his hands very well. And he's getting like very intense, and it just feels like everything's lining up in this way, and he's just right in my face, spittle hitting me. And I just feel compelled to just sit there and just send him love. And I love the man. He's a very sweet soul. But what ended up happening was, at one point when he went through one of these waves, he said something about him being responsible, like for everything, or something like that. And I smiled a little bit and looked at him kind of knowingly and nodded. And then he started nod along with me. He smiled first, and then he started to nod. And then the nodding, because there's music playing at a bar across the street, and the nodding started to turn into this kind of dancing. We're doing that, and then he's making more like just joyful noises. And again, I do not know how it got here exactly, but so he started like trying to sing along to the music, but it's mostly just single syllable sounds. And then he dropped off and got quiet for a second. And then in that window, I took probably about 15 seconds, and I freestyle sang stuff. It was something about, I don't even know exactly. But it was about like, hey, yeah, life can be very hard, but you are love and all this stuff. But it was like just like 10, 15 seconds of that. And then he started to go again. And then this time the sounds were much more intelligible, and I was able to actually get a bunch of his story. And it was obviously very tragic. But so he started singing, and then I began to kind of do this chanting, like, oh, because the music was gone, and so then he was singing along to the noises I was making, and it was so cool where it's like he would be in this kind of like elevated, happier set, and then he would go into the depths, and it would get down, and I would go with him, and the tone would get deeper tone, and he'd get more intense, get more in my face, deeper, and then once he wasn't pulling me down anymore, and we'd level out, I would start to raise the tone back up, and he would follow the tone back up, back to the joyful state, and then at some point, I put on music, his favorite music, OJ Juice Man. I put on his favorite music, and we danced together. And it was energetically very similar to like at festivals or party clubs or whatever it is, where there's the kind of very deep embodied intelligence for connection. And there's the bumping and there's all the stuff. And so it's just me and this man listening to the music, standing there and just like occasionally bumping into each other, and just so much fucking joy, dude. It was so beautiful. And I probably hung out with him for a little over an hour, and my mind had been telling me to leave pretty much right off the bat, you know what I mean? But for whatever reason, it just felt like it was time to stay. And in retrospect, the kind of cue where it felt appropriate to actually leave was after he stopped going through the waves. Once he was done testing me to see if I actually, like if he was going to scare me off or something like that, and we were able to just have, several minutes of uninterrupted, just kind of connective joy, and then it was time to leave, and I gave him one more hug, and he hugged me for probably about a minute, like hold his head, and it's just like very beautiful. And this video is already kind of long, so I'm not going to go into it, but it's just with the way that my life has gone, where it feels like everything has just been lining up in just such a profound way and such a deep sense of meaning, particularly about the idea of using music and dance and that sort of thing as a sort of like vehicle for helping, the world, helping people. This was just unbelievably beautiful, because again, it was the same connective intelligence that I had been cultivating at shows and that sort of thing, where there's kind of there's the whole environment to help facilitate that kind of thing, and to be able to take that out at 2 a.m. onto the street with this man, and to be able to, he told me he wanted to feel joy. That's what first of all, he wants to die. It's like, well, that's not my business. But then he wanted to feel joy, and then I was able to just sit there with him and go through, first of all, the dark stuff that he had to process with me before there was any hope of any kind of connection. And then to go from that into just genuine, deep, connected joy. Very beautiful. Anyway, I think that's pretty much it. All right. Bye-bye.